Hello everyone and welcome to the National Motorsports Press Association Hall of Fame located inside the Joe Weatherly Museum, the Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina. And welcome to NASCAR Video Magazine, the Collector Series. I'm your host, Benny Parsons, and we take you behind the scenes and to the front row of action in a way not available anywhere else. Here's what's on tap as we bring the NASCAR lifestyle roaring into your living room. I get to spend some personal time with Harry Gant. We talk about his favorite things, racing and construction. We take a tour of the Mellow Yellow hauler, and you'll see why these trucks are high-tech garages on wheels. Our NASCAR legend is my close friend and colleague in the booth, Ned Jarrett. In a special report from the Winston Racing Series, we talk with sportsman driver Robbie Faggart, a young man with a dream. And in our cover story, we take an in-depth look at racing's toughest tracks and turns. And there's more, much more. But enough of me talking, let's get to it. When you start talking about tough corners in racing, the first one you think about is turn 4 at Darlington. But just a minute, let's talk about a few more corners before we get to this one. Let's go to Pocono, turn 1. You're going down the front straightaway at about 200 miles an hour, looking at turn 1 forever because the straightaway is over 3,500 feet. And you get there and you have to turn into a flat corner and you wonder every lap, am I going to make it? Most of the time you do. The tunnel corner at Pocono, the car has to be so precise. It has to be at exactly the right place. Otherwise, you're not going to get through that turn well at all. You're going to go up, push off the corner, or get sideways. There's only about a 2 feet leeway that you have to put the car in. Turn 3 at Pocono, you have to get off that corner to maintain your speed to go down that long straightaway. It's critical you get off that corner and don't have to back off the throttle.
Second turn at Pocono over the tunnel, I feel like it's one of the most dangerous and the most difficult turns in racing. You go down that straightaway at 180, probably 90 miles an hour into just a 90-degree corner with, right head on into the wall. I'd rate that as probably the most dangerous and one of the toughest.
Bristol, turns 1 and 2, 3 and 4, they're the same. The racetrack is banked 35 degrees. When you drive in the corner at, say, 130 miles an hour, it feels like it's going to throw the entire body through the right door. The strain on the upper body and the neck is incredible. When you get through with that race, you just want to lay down and die.
Well, I'd say that one of the toughest tracks to maneuver is probably Bristol, Tennessee. It's probably most physically demanding.
Bristol's a difficult track from the standpoint is it's very demanding, and Bristol will get you too if you're not, if you get too aggressive at Bristol late in a race, the rubber builds up coming off of turn 2 and turn 4, and if also going into the corners, if you try to pinch the corners off a little bit, they'll get you there.
And not all drivers pick the traditionally hard racetracks as their tough racetrack. You'd be surprised what some drivers pick as their tough track.
And Daytona has the same characteristics of a Darlington. Track was built in 1959 for 130 miles an hour, maybe at max, 140 miles an hour. And today, without restrictor plates, we could easily run 220 there. So Daytona is a very difficult track, and turn 4 at Daytona, again, is one of the most dangerous and most difficult turns there is on any racetrack. But because of the speeds we run there and the way the cars handle and the way we can race each other at Daytona, it makes it one of the most difficult racetracks in my mind. And I know when I look at that crash from Daytona in '91, it brings tears to my eyes because I don't know how I survived that. And it's really a credit to our sport and to our cars and really the conditioning of most of the athletes in the sport that we can survive things like that.
Newer tracks that I find to have a real tough turn on it, and you don't see a lot happen there, but every lap it gets your attention. That's Phoenix coming off of turn 2. You come running off there wide open, and that wall that comes out at, on the exit, it just jumps right out at you. And I scared myself more than one time getting off there, wondering if I was going to hit it or not.
As far as the turns, Atlanta's a pretty nervy track. Going in both corners, it's a pretty fast racetrack. It's mostly all corners, and you're hitting 190 mile an hour getting in the corners. So that's a pretty nervy track. It's there's so many grooves you can run. You got to think about killing yourself and going, in the right groove.
True chiefs and car owners they have their own definition of the toughest racetracks and toughest corners.
Well, the toughest tracks in Winston Cup racing for me are the ones that my drivers don't like the most. I really enjoy going to Richmond, you know, and I think Pocono is grand, and we don't manage to run as well there as we'd like to, based on the fact that that we haven't yet figured out exactly how to get the car the way it needs to be, or our engine doesn't make as much power as it needs, or the drivers don't like the track.
I wouldn't doubt if Bristol 3 and 4 ain't about the toughest one. They're running so fast, and it's a change of the condir changes so fast there. You're going down the straightaway and you're pretty much flat. All of a sudden you're sitting in a real high bank, and the car does change. It has a reaction almost instant when you go in the turn. So it's pretty tough to get a car to settle down real quick like that.
What's the hardest? The one you're at right now. And what's the easiest? The one you won at last. So it's awful difficult to say.
Some drivers find road courses very challenging, including some drivers that are supposed to be the masters of road racing.
I think probably at Sears Point, turn 7 is the hardest, especially in a Winston Cup car. It's a pretty flat turn, and on the outside of the turn, when you're going through the right-hander, the pavement changes, and it's really slippery, and it's really hard to get these big, heavy cars through there with no tire. You really got to be agile on the throttle, and really try to get the power down, because it's real important. That launches you for the second half of the track, really, at Sears Point. You got to, when you get off of turn 7, it gets you all the way back through turn 11. So it's real important to get out there, and it's really hard to get out there right. And I think I've run there about 10 or 12 times, and I think I've done that corner right probably once or twice.
And some racetracks that are relatively easy, weather can make very difficult. Daytona and Talladega, a good 30-40 mile an hour wind can really affect the race cars, particularly as you're trying to turn the car as you come off the corner. You're trying to turn into a headwind, it makes it almost impossible as the wind strikes the side of that car to get it to turn and go the other direction. Daytona and Talladega, you never have to lift off the throttle until you get in a real strong wind. Then you got to squeeze out of the gas to get off the corner and turn into that wind. But turn 4 is the one that most often mentioned.
Turn 4 at Darlington is a really hard turn. Probably Darlington's got to be the toughest. Getting through turn 4, getting through 4 without hitting the wall coming off is a trick in itself. You just got to get mad and mean and grit your teeth and talk to yourself. I mean, because you're really struggling with the race car. You're trying to make it do something that it doesn't want to do. The car's sliding a lot, and you know, you have all these senses going on. I mean, you're feeling the car slide, and you're through the steering wheel and through your tailbone, and you really just have to get mad and really drive the thing hard.
Darlington's Darlington. I mean, everybody knows that type of track. You know, there haven't been many accidents there lately is because we've been treating the old lady pretty good, you know. Every time everybody gets smart aleck with it, you know, it jumps up and bites you. But, you know, you got to respect that racetrack. Darlington's the type of racetrack where, you know, some of the worst accidents, you know, are like Richard Petty, you know, had coming off turn 4 years ago. But most of the accidents you see there aren't really bad because you're running up so close to the wall, you know. It don't give you a long time to hit hard. It's just that it ruins you enough to where you can't finish the race.
You know, it was built for cars to run 120 maybe, 120 probably at the most miles per hour. And now we go out there and run almost 170 at it, you know, and certainly over that on the straightaways. So makes for the room you got to race very narrow when you use what you got to have just to make a lap around there.
Darlington is fast, it's narrow, and concentration-wise, it takes an incredible amount of concentration.
And, you know, the problems start here in the middle of the corner, about where it says Darlington, USA. That's where you have to make the decision, what do I do with the steering wheel? Do I turn or do I wait? Because you can't see where you're going. You just can't see. If you turn too soon, you drive it in the apron. If you turn too late, you run in the outside retaining wall. But, you know, it's hard to explain what I'm saying by listening to me. Let's take a ride. I borrowed a car from the raceway. Russell Branham was kind enough to loan me the pace car. Let's go for a ride. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, you folks ready to go for a lap around Darlington Raceway? the racetrack that's too tough to tame. Front straightaway, going into a pretty tight corner, turn 1. About 180 miles an hour at this point, off the gas, on the brakes. The car goes to the bottom of the racetrack, but it will go up because of the corner is so sharp that the car will go back up the racetrack. Here you're playing with the steering wheel, with the throttle, trying to find that perfect line, come off this corner. And as you come off, right up against the outside retaining wall. You can see how sharp turn 3 is. That's why it's so difficult for 2 cars to go in this corner, because you can see we're going to go from the outside of the racetrack right to the bottom of the racetrack, taking the whole racetrack. Then the car will go back up against the outside retaining wall. See the problem we've got? We can't see where we're going. You don't know when to turn the wheel. You wait, but all of a sudden it's too late. You can't turn it. You come off the corner and the car goes up and just smacks the outside retaining wall. That's what happens when you turn too late at Darlington. Now we'll do a lap and we'll turn too soon and show you what happens. Once again, off the gas, on the brakes hard, down to the bottom. We go back up. And you're going along, you say, man, I gotta turn. Yeah, I'm gonna turn. So you turn. And guess what happens? You've turned too soon. You go down on the apron of the racetrack, which throws you right back up in the outside retaining wall, even harder than you would have had you been close to the outside retaining wall.
And you know, we're talking about tough racetracks, and what makes them tough is you crash, you hit the outside wall, or you spin and another car hits you. But it's not the fear of getting hurt that's the problem. It's the fear of losing that affects the driver, of losing the race, not being able to win the race. As tough as these tracks are physically, and they are hard physically because of the upper body of the neck and the pound that you take inside the race car, and the fact it's so hot in there and you're not able to get the fluid you really need, it's the mental thing, having to concentrate so hard for 4, sometimes 5 hours sitting there thinking about the next corner every time you're down the straightaway. Hey, look, I got to go in turn 3. I got to get on the brakes here. Turn 4, I got to turn not too soon. I got to turn too early. You know, those are the things you have to think about every inch of the way. When it's over, physically you're exhausted, but mentally you're drained.
Ultimately, all drivers face the same challenge on the track, and victory or defeat rests in their hands and the hands of their crew. It's this level playing field that makes NASCAR the competitive sport it is, and makes for some great racing too. Now for a NASCAR legend. You may not know this, but Ned Jarrett is a great race car driver and one of the classiest men in our sport. My friend, Ned Jarrett. You see him just about every Sunday talking about NASCAR. Ned Jarrett, a 2-time Grand National champion, knows of what he speaks, because during his career, the man known as Gentleman Ned earned 50 victories, placing him 7th on the all-time list. These days, when not on the road with the circuit, he relaxes at home behind the 8th green, where we caught up with him. Well, I'm sitting with a guy that I work alongside about 15, 16 times a year. I came to his home to visit with him, Mr. Ned Jarrett, my fellow announcer on ESPN. Ned, if you didn't work with us on ESPN and have your Inside Winston Cup show, what would you do for a living?
That's a good question, Benny. I don't know. It would be something associated with automobiles. You know, I've been associated with cars all of my life. And Glenn and I have a Honda dealership. I probably would be working with him in it, maybe sweeping the floors or helping back in the garage area or something like
or
that.
selling cars. Hey, folks, would you buy a used car from this guy? No, I don't think so. How old were you when you started racing?
I was 19 when I drove my first race at the Hickory Speedway. The first race that was ever run at Hickory, North Carolina was the first race that I drove. You know, when they started building that racetrack, it was a big thing here in the county. They didn't have anything like that around here, and you go down to the country store and everybody was talking about, boy, that big racetrack coming here, and everybody was going to be a race driver. And secretly, I said, this might be it. So for about 6 months, I didn't drive. And then my partner, John Lentz, was driving the car. And he got sick one night at Hickory Speedway. And didn't feel like driving, and he had a long nose like mine, and you put the helmet on, you couldn't tell a whole lot of difference. So we went out in the infield. It's pretty dark at those dirt tracks on Saturday night, and so we changed shirts, and I pulled that thing out of the infield, and nobody knew the difference. And I ran second that night. And so we figured, well, I must be the best driver. And so we'd just keep on doing it. We got by that night. Why can't we just keep on doing it? We did for several months. And I finally lucked up and won a race, and they caught up with us. And,
when you pulled in victory lane,
yeah,
the cat was out of the bag.
Yeah, it was out of the bag. So my dad learned about it, so he came to me and he said, hey, he said, if you're so determined to drive one of those things, said, you might as well use your own name. See, I was using John Lentz's name. I wasn't using my name. And said, you might as well use your own name and get credit for any accomplishments that you have along the way. So that's one victory that I have that I wouldn't get credit for.
John Lentz won that race.
Yeah, John Lentz won that race.
Winning under his own name soon became a habit. First, there were 2 National Sportsman Driving Championships, followed by a pair of NASCAR Winston Cup Grand National Championships, the first in 1961.
1961. How much did the championship, what was that worth of dollar-wise?
The driver's point fund was $6,200, $6,250 or something like that.
And the owner got an equal amount, or?
No, it was about 2/3 of that. So it would have been around $10,000.
About $10,000 for
yeah,
everything.
Yeah, right. And then the following year, you get $100 a race being the champion. Guaranteed appearance money the following year.
So now, today, it's worth $1.2 million, 1.3 million?
Yeah.
And the champion next year gets what, 2,500?
I think it's maybe 4,000 or 5,000 or something.
Is it really?
I think it's gone over, yeah, it's increased considerably over the years.
I think it probably has kept up with inflation, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so, no doubt about it. And then in '62, I was on my own, but I had a Chevrolet deal. And we won 6 races that year, but finished pretty far down the points. And then Ford came to me in September at Darlington and said, we are going to get back into racing. We'll have 4 teams in 1963. We'd like for you to be one of them. And man, I was on cloud 9. I said, yes, sir, you can get me. And so we did. And so we won 8 races then in '63 with Ford. And then towards the end of that year, they called me to see if I would be interested in driving for Bondi Long and moving to Camden, South Carolina. So we did that, and won 15 races then in '64 with Bondi. And then in '65, we won the championship again, won 13 races that year. '65 was a great year, and then '66, Ford pulled out and left us sort of sitting there holding the bag, you know, as far as the capitalizing on the championship that we'd won in '65. And so all of those things sort of started me to thinking about maybe I ought to do something else. And we'd reached the goals that we set for ourselves anyway. I think there were a number of things, Benny, that caused me to retire, and perhaps Junior Johnson, Fred Lorenzen, and Marvin Panch. We all 4 retired within a year of each other. I personally had set certain goals for myself and vowed that however far up the ladder I got, I'd quit while I was there. I would never go down the other side. And I think that I'm the only driver to this day who retired while I was still the champion. And that has always made me feel good that I was at the top when I did retire. And I did reach the goals that I set for myself. Maybe I didn't set them high enough, but certainly the money was not there that you could build wealth so that you could retire and maybe not have to do anything for the rest of your life. And, you know, the kids were growing up and I was not able to spend much time with them, and we have always had a very close-knit family, and I wanted to spend more time with them. And that was certainly one of the reasons that I chose to quit when I did. And then too, you know, I was 34. I think Junior Johnson was 35, Lorenzen was 33. We didn't know how long we could keep doing this. You compare yourselves with athletes in other sports, and they get in their mid-30s, and you know they begin to lose some of the enthusiasm and some of the athletic strengths that they had had. And so I guess we compared ourselves with some of those athletes, and we know now from Richard Petty and a lot of others, yourself, that you can go much longer than that. And as a matter of fact, normally you improve. Dale, my son, is 35 and just getting in his prime. And I was 34 when I quit.
When you quit?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so strange is we see the guys today just getting in their prime in their mid-30s. Harry Gant, at what, 52 years old, was unbelievable. And he's 53 now, still winning racing.
Yeah.
When did you find out you had the gift of gab?
As far as getting up and speaking to people on my feet, no way. I was one of the most bashful people that you've ever seen in your life.
What?
Didn't wear a pair of pants until I was 14 years old because I thought they were for sissies. I wore overalls.
I mean, we're talking about bib overalls.
Bib overalls. I was
You're kidding.
Yes, sir.
Going barefoot in the summer.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We only had one pair of shoes last a year, and they were plow shoes.
So you wouldn't get up. I mean, so how did you overcome the shyness?
Well, after I started doing reasonably well in racing, I got interested in the Elks Lodge. When the officers are inducted into an Elks Lodge, it's a beautiful ceremony. And one Sunday afternoon, we inducted the new officers, and they asked me to be a Grand Lodge officer to induct these people. And they invited the county commissioners and the mayors and all of these big wigs in the community, you know, and I said, here's a chance for me to impress some people and show them that, you know, that a race driver and a country boy can talk, get up in front of people. And I studied my part. I could do that thing backwards and forwards. I get up in front of the mirror, and they said, no, we're going to send a prompter over there and sit down beside your station. I said, you don't need to send a prompter over here. I can handle it. They came around to my station, and I got up and couldn't open my mouth. Could not think of the first word to say.
You're kidding.
Never been so embarrassed in my life.
You're kidding.
But that prompter was there. They had sent him on over there, and so I stumbled through it. And I had seen an ad that morning in the Charlotte paper of the Dale Carnegie course. And I went down on Monday night at 7:27, and they started putting that sales pitch on me about what all they could do. I said, just show me where to sign, tell me how much it costs. I know I won't need it. And so I signed up for the Dale Carnegie course, and it was absolutely the best thing I ever, this is not a commercial for Dale Carnegie, but it was the best thing that ever happened in my life.
I mean, think about this. 12-year-old kid, 14-year-old kid, out on a farm, barefoot, bibbed overalls, and 50 years later, 45 years later, is standing up talking to millions of people.
Benny, I believe it was a bigger struggle getting to where you could make a living in broadcasting than it was in driving the race car. And I've said a number of times that the broadcasting career has been a bigger challenge than driving the race car. And I think that's one of the reasons, is that it takes so long to get yourself in position to where you can make something from it. And then, of course, the other reason would be having grown up on the farm and working at a sawmill, and then one day be working with you and the other greats in broadcasting on ESPN and CBS on national television. I mean, that's special to me, and has presented a special challenge.
Ned Jarrett, an amazing man, and credit to NASCAR. It's an honor to know him and to work with him. Next, Richard Bostic, driver of the hauler for Kyle Petty's Mellow Yellow Pontiac. He's going to take us on a tour to show us what's really inside the big rigs. As you'll see, they do a lot more than just transport cars to the track. When you see a race truck going down the highway, or you in the grandstands of a race and you look down in the pit area and see all the trucks, you wonder, why on earth did they need such big trucks to haul a simple car around? Well, with me today we have Richard Bostic, the truck driver for Kyle Petty's Mellow Yellow Pontiac. Richard, can you take us a tour of your truck to show us what you haul around?
Sure, I'll be glad to, Benny.
Okay, this is the back of the truck, and what's this, free Mellow Yellow?
Free Mellow Yellow. If you're at the track, come by, I'll give you one.
Okay, trash can, you gotta have that, right?
Oh yeah, gotta have a trash can. We got a water tank. A lot of tracks you go to don't have spigots on pit walls, so you'll carry this water tank in case you'd have a heating problem. You'd fill this up, push air in it with a nitrogen bottle, and then you can put water in the car in case you'd have trouble overheating. Okay, now what do we, this is a water cooler, I can see that. Right. What do we have in all these compartments? What do we got in here? Well, back here we've got spare air cleaners, rags to use on race day, buckets and stuff to change oil with. Also got brake duct stuff on short tracks where you use brake ducts to cool the rotors and things down with.
What about here? What's in here?
This is the radio cabinets where we charge the radios up for race day, where you can talk back and forth to Kyle.
Okay. What about here? What we got here?
This is where the guys' clothes is at. We carry 2 spare radiators, spare drinking water, fans when the car comes in during practice and everything to keep it cool. And this is the clothes that the guys will wear on race day.
Are these your clothes or Kyle's? Are these your?
No. Well, one of those is mine, but the rest of the guys wear fire suits on race day. So Kyle's is up front in the locker, but this is the rest of the guys that wear clothes on race day.
And why the drinking water?
Well, you go so many places, the water's not really that good, so we use that good drinking water. So, you know. Here we've got shocks.
Boy, do we ever have shocks. How many? What is all those?
Well, it's roughly 100 shocks here, Benny. Most people, you know, on their passenger car have got 4 shocks, but here we've got different shocks that you use for different valve settings for different tracks.
I mean, a race car has 4 shocks as well, right?
Right, but during the week, you try to dial the car in to suit the driver. So this shock may be too stiff for him. You might want a shock that's softer or vice versa.
Okay, Richard, what we have here?
Well, here, Benny, we have motor change, gear change, tear down box. This is the box that you really like to have at the end of the race, because if you use this box, you've usually won the race. So that's a good box to have. But like I say, this is the gear change. It's got everything in it that you'll need to change a gear.
Well, you have all that in the toolbox, don't you?
True, but this way, everything is right here at you. You don't have to be, if you're underneath the car, you don't have to get up and go out there and get a wrench. You've got everything you need to change the gear underneath. Same thing with the motor change boxes. Everything is up front in the car, every wrench, everything that you need. You don't have to be running back and forth to the toolbox.
It says motor change right side. Now, don't tell me that the guy working on the right side of the car uses this box and the guy working on the left side uses another box. Are you telling me that?
Right, see here, right and left side. So it's got all the tools. There's left side and right side. So the guy on the right side's got his tools, the guy on the left side's got his tools.
All right, we got springs.
Right. Here again, some cars don't, you know, got torsion bar system, but you know, some of the older cars, you got 4 springs, 2 in the front, 2 in the rear. Here we've got springs that rate from 175 to up to 500. It just depends, again, where you're running at, what rate spring that you want to run.
Oh, and all these are just what it says on the boxes, right?
Yeah, you try to keep everything organized. This is fittings for each oil line that you've got on the car. In case you would have trouble, then you can come here and put a new fitting on it. Same thing with brake lines and so forth. Nuts and bolts. You know, basically, whatever you be using on the car, this is what you've got here.
What about down here? What have we got in these big ones down here?
Let's see. We usually carry 4 motors. I've got, you know, a couple more to load. They tell me this is like $26,000 right here from the ground. Each.
4 engines. Why do you have 4 engines? Are they all just spares, or the different combinations, or what?
No, some's different combinations, Benny, but then most people have what you call a qualifying engine in the car. And so you'll practice and qualify with that engine. Then you've got a race engine that you'll put in on Saturday afternoon mostly. And this is the engine that's, you know, hopefully it'll go 500 miles. So basically your qualifying engine may be a little bit looser, and your race engine is, you know, made to go 500 miles.
Hey, Richard, we missed those tall ones on the other side. What are they?
It's more spare parts, Benny.
All right, what we got?
Well, we've got a spare rear end housing. We've got trailing arms, extra Union 76 motor oil, 2 transmissions, gear oil, rear end gears, extra weight, sway bars, axles.
So this housing is ready to go?
It's ready to go. All we'd have to do is put the gear in it, slide the axles in, and go.
Would you use the same rear housing at Atlanta you would use in Daytona or Talladega?
If you got in a wreck, this is a deal where that, you know, if you had a wreck, it wouldn't make any difference. I mean, all you want to do is get back in and get points. So, yeah, we'd use it either place.
Okay, now all this, it has to be dry. The cars have to be on a racetrack to use this truck.
Right.
So what do you do in the rain?
When it rains, we'll go up in the lounge and watch movies.
Okay, let's go see what kind of movies we got. All right, Richard. It's pretty nice.
Oh, yeah. All the comforts of home.
What we got in here?
We've got a bathroom in here, Benny.
All right. TV?
TV.
Satellite dish?
No, no satellite dish.
But we do get regular television. What, VCR?
Oh, we got VCR. We can watch NASCAR video. We've got a stereo system. We want to watch, listen to music.
Well, let's crank up the stereo and sit down and rest.
Sounds good to me.
All right. This must be Kyle's favorite room in the whole place.
Oh, yeah, he likes to get up here and watch old Western movies, you know, sit back and relax when he gets a chance.
Let's sit down and relax.
Okay.
So how many miles you put a year on this truck?
Well, it just depends, Benny. You know, we do a lot of testing, anywhere from 65 to 75,000 miles a year.
You have any help doing this?
About the only time I have any help is when I go to Sears Point, Phoenix. Charles Rat Lane will go with me.
All right, crank up the TV. Let's watch TV. Got any popcorn?
Oh, yeah, I got popcorn back there. We'll throw it in the microwave and have a good time.
Turn it on. Let's go. "20 years ago, we had to do our bench racing in the rain. Now they have a 45-foot trailer to do it in. Next, I spent a few minutes with a driver with a dream. He's unique in that he's had a glimpse of life behind the wheel of a Winston Cup car. But his is a universal story, the quest to overcome adversity to make a dream come true. Sportsman Division champion Robbie Faggart. Robbie Faggart has made his mark in NASCAR on local tracks and is champion of the Sportsman Division, racking up 4 wins in 1992. Robbie's dream is the same as every driver, Winston Cup racing. Now, Robbie flirted with that dream in 1987, but didn't make the show. He's gone back to his roots to make that dream come true. Let's meet this fine young man. This is Robbie Faggart. We're visiting in his living room. Robert, congratulations.
Thank you, Benny.
I said Robert. It's Robbie, right?
Yeah, it's Robbie.
Is it Robert or Robbie?
Robbie. Robbie Faggart.
That's the whole name?
Yeah. Robert Glenn Faggart, Jr.
Oh, Robert.
Yeah.
We see, I asked if it was Robert or Robert. You said Robbie.
Oh, Robert's fine, but everybody calls me Robbie.
I got it. So, how many races, the Sportsman is what, 4 or 5 races?
There were 7 races this year. 5 at Charlotte and 2 at Pocono.
And you won how many of them?
Won 4 at Charlotte. 4 out of 5 at Charlotte, and a 6th and a 4th at Pocono.
Are you going to defend your title?
Next year? No, we plan to run some bush races next year. We want to try to run around 15 and race schedule next year. We've got a couple things working, you know, for sponsors. Don't have any this time. We're, you know, out looking. As far as we know right now, though, we do plan to run 15. We've got a couple cars being built.
See, I met you in what, when was that I met you, 87?
1987.
For the first time?
All Pro Auto Parts.
And Chuck Ryder, who owns Michael Waltrip's car, was trying to put a racing team together, and you was going to be his driver.
Yeah. It was Chuck Ryder, Lawrence Harry, and Dan Allen, a guy from Raleigh, a friend of mine I drove for. I drove the Daytona Dash car for Dan Allen. 1987, we all got together and was going to try to run. We ran 2 bush races. Was going to attempt to run qualifying. Was going to attempt to run a race at Charlotte in the Winston Cup. Didn't make it. It was a half-mile-an-hour out of the field. Everybody just kind of dropped back and collected our thoughts, and we had a little meeting. Okay, it was. I really just chose friendship over business. I'm in the mobile home business here on the mobile home park in Concord. We started running a couple races in 1987, and at that time I started building this mobile home park at the same time. So what we decided to do was going to run 10 races with Dan Allen. Well, I just let the All Pro Auto Parts deal go, and as it turned out, Dan Allen quit racing and kind of put me in the middle, and I just kind of started over again all by myself. So in 1990, we ran the Sportsman Series when it came into effect, and we won a few races in that, and been pretty successful. We've won a championship this year in it, so it's just been an uphill battle for me as far as, you know, getting back started again the proper way. I've had a few opportunities to run some Busch Grand National, but really nothing that I felt like I'd be successful in. And I'm trying to do things, you know, whatever division I'm in, we try to do it the right way.
Let's go back to 1987.
The All-Pro Auto Parts team that we're talking about later became Bahari Racing.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Michael Walters' Pennzoil car, right?
Yeah, I think about that every time I see him out there, but you know, I really have no regrets. I would like to have done something with Chuck, but as it turned out, you know, we just couldn't get anything together. So I went ahead and you know, kind of took it on my own. I more or less went into the mobile home business to try to get me some monthly income coming in that I could really count on, because you know how racing is sometimes. You really can't depend on if you're going to be driving, you know, from one ride to the next. So what I wanted to do was just go with something more stable. Try to be a little bit successful on the local short tracks and kind of build up again my career like I've been doing. I don't really have any regrets, but I do think about it, you know, sometimes about, you know, I had a real nice Winston Cup ride.
You're hoping that the Sportsman Championship can kind of get you something to run the Busch Series.
Yeah, that's what we've been working on. Some friends of mine, Hank Jones, Joey Tillman, Mike Troxel with Sports Image, they've really been, you know, great friends to me. They've really helped me push my career this past year along. I want to try to run 15 races next year if possible.
When you go to the Busch Grand National Division, you're the champion of the NASCAR Sportsman Division. You're going to be thrown in there with champions from all over. And you're going to... Are you apprehensive about being thrown in with 30 champions, 20 champions?
Sure. You know, that's my goal. I would like to... I know it's not going to be easy at all, and I like to have my opportunity to get into Busch Grand National. And when it comes, all the track champions from all over, they're all not champions anymore. They're all rookies, you know, trying to strive for one goal. And I want to have their respect, and it'll be interesting just to see how, you know, the outcome will be. But it'll be a lot of fun. It's something I look forward to, Benny. I want to get out and hustle with the you know, the Winston Cup guys one day. I want to get out and run with the Busch guys next couple of years. I'm not wanting to push my way in anything. I want to earn it, but at the same time, you know, I feel like I paid my dues, and I really want to try to get there and give it a good shot.
Whether he makes it or not, that is a young man who will always know he pursued his dreams. Now we want you to meet one of the most unique people in our sport, Max Helton. Ministering spiritual needs of NASCAR drivers and their crews is no part-time job. Max does his work where his congregation spends most of their time, on the road and in the garage area. Here's Max.
Max is a wonderful teacher. He was a minister in California. He had a calling to come and work with the competitors on the Winston Cup circuit. When he first came here in '87, it was kind of slim pickings, and things didn't look all that encouraging to him. And it was really exciting to see the ministry grow the way it has, and the respect that Max has gained, because people can tell he's a godly man, and they love to hear him preach. And the Sunday morning services are really well attended. We have Bible studies on Friday nights. We have a conference every year where everybody can get together. And it's really good for us just to be able to spend that few minutes on Sunday, quiet time, worshiping the Lord and being led by a man like Max.
For me, I think it's extremely important, because I really am a sold-out believer in the fact that we race on Sunday. It's kind of like without the services and things are going on, then all I have is just the Wednesday night services when we're at home. And we travel so much, it's really tough. So the church is the people, it's not a building, you know, and to be able to have motor racing outreach going with us to the facilities at the tracks and having the Bible studies during the week, it allows us to have a full spiritual life, yet still be able to compete on the weekends.
I had not really thought of ministering as we are really today. I was very familiar with, because I had worked some with some of the people in the California Angels organization, and I had met some of those in NFL football. I was very much aware of what was being done in other sports, and it was not really being done on that kind of thing here in racing. So as we began to talk about some of the needs in the lives of drivers and crew members and wives and so on, I just felt impressed to try to do something about it. I wasn't planning on doing it myself. I was just going to help them to do something about it, okay? So I met with them here in Atlanta in 1988 in the March race. I flew in from LA and back the same day. I didn't even come to the track. We just met in the hotel. And we laid out a program of how they could be involved in a ministry. And we were going to try to find someone to meet that need. I was just going to help them do that. I was still pastoring my church. And so as a result of that, they said, where do we go? I said, well, you're going to be banking in Riverside for the last race at Riverside, which was June of '88. I said, between now, which is March, and then, I want you to meet together in one of your rooms and just pray. Now, this was with Lake Speed, Bobby Hillen, Darrell Waltrip, and their wives. And they met together for all those races between in one of their hotel rooms at every race and just had a prayer meeting, praying about what they should do. So we met then in June of '88 in Riverside, and I brought in Norm Evans from NFL football, who had been in ministry with football. We talked about all those things, and there at that meeting, they said, well, Max, you know a lot about this situation. Would you consider doing this? And that's kind of how it got going. So I resigned my church and moved to Charlotte, didn't know anyone. I couldn't hardly even name you 5 drivers' names at that time in racing. And here we are. It just kind of started out. All right, we started with 3 couples in a hotel room, and that went for a whole year. Couldn't even get anybody else to come. I mean, I tried, I invited people, nothing happened. And then finally a 4th couple, Phil and Marsha Parsons, came in, and they came for a while and still couldn't get anybody else, all right? But then it began to grow, and in 1989, the second race at Pocono, Pennsylvania, Les Richter called me to his office, and we talked, and he said that nothing had been done. There had been someone had been doing chapel services, and that had dropped. And one asked me if I could fulfill that role. So we started the chapel service. We had 35 people that first Sunday in Pocono. Now that has grown since 1989 till in a lot of races we'll have over 400 people. It's averaging probably between 200 and 300 every Sunday chapel service right here in the garage. That's drivers and wives and crew members and so on. Now what's really interesting in that is from those 3 original couples, drivers and their wives, now over half of the Winston Cup drivers are involved in chapel service, coming every week faithfully. Not only that, but we started some Bible studies, and even that I didn't plan. I still did not have a direction about these Bible studies in the early part of the ministry. Didn't know I was really going to do them. And when Mike Rich was killed in Atlanta, Bill Elliott asked me to come up to their shop and talk with their crew members. And then they asked me to come again and again until finally I was going regularly each month to that shop having a Bible study. Other teams started hearing about that, said we'd like that to do in our shop, so we did. Now we have 18 Bible studies in 18 race shops in Winston Cup racing, with over 250 of these crewmen in this garage involved in Bible study. Now that's incredible. I mean, most people who are fans and people out there don't really realize what's going on in this particular area of their life. What is unique about ministering to professional drivers and crew members is just, it's pure. See, in church life, if you're not careful, there's a facade put up, you know. I go to church on Sunday, so I put on my best suit. You know, I kind of dress up, I look good. I want everybody to think I'm pretty good. What is good about ministering to these people is the fact there is no facade. It comes just as you are, you know, and nobody has to clean up, dress up, put on a big front or any spiritual thing, and it's fresh. It's fresh to see these people, even when you're studying the Bible, to see them open up a Bible and look at it for maybe the first time in their life, a particular passage particularly, and see the freshness of thought that comes into their mind. I didn't know that. Whereas people in church, even if they don't know it, they make you think they know it, okay? But here these people it's like feeding a little bird, you know, and just mouth open and understanding for the first time some rich truths about life. And they're just grasping those truths, and it's exciting.
Max Helton, a very special and important part of our sport. Now here's a driver profile, a close-up look at a man who keeps on going and going and going. Harry Gant. Harry Gant broke into Winston Cup racing as a 39-year-old rookie in 1979. In the 80s, he was known as the bridesmaid for his string of second-place finishes. But by the end of the decade and into the 90s, he emerged as one of the most consistent drivers on the circuit, racking up 5 Cup wins and 5 Busch Grand National victories during a magical September in 1991. We caught up with Harry doing his favorite things besides driving, knocking in nails. You enjoy building things, don't you?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Houses, buildings, just
whatever. Just so it's, you know, working with wood and things I really enjoy.
What, the last couple of years you've continued been building something?
About the last 3 years. I started about 3 years. I took a slack period there from in the middle 80s, you know, when we were, I wasn't doing any building. And I think it was maybe Bristol, Tennessee race on Saturday night. And for the first time ever, my neck started hurting. And, you know, I was a little bit winded when the race was over, so I felt like it would be time that I had some things need to be done real bad, and some building I was going to hard done, so I think I'll just do it myself. And I had so much fun doing it for the last 3 years, I just keep continuing doing it. All through the summer, I'll build something. It takes me almost from spring to late fall to get through with it.
Well, now you're building a house for your daughter, and this building that we're leaned up against, this is basically for you,
yeah,
for your equipment. What's your next project?
We got a big barn over here I'm remodeling. It's a pole barn, and it's got lofts, so I got to brace it all up a lot better and put a whole new skin around it. It's like skinning a race car and put the metal around it and a lot of stalls inside of it. So then I got about 2 years of repairing on fences.
So you got something to do for the next couple of years?
The next several years, my time's taken up totally, and I enjoy it there.
How'd you get in the racing business?
Well, it's sort of I never really thought about being in the racing business. Some boys built a car, and they asked me if I wanted to drive it. Some at Hickory to come down and help with some boys I went to school with, which were older than me, that were basically graduating by the time I was in high school. So I went down and pedaled on that thing, and we finally take it over to Hickory and raced it. And I'd race it 1 week, the other boy would race it 1 week, and in the hobby division, 6-cylinder. And so it was just a lot of fun to be able to go over there on Saturday nights, and then I won the championship, and they promoted you up to a sportsman, and that eliminated me for a couple of years there.
You didn't have a ride?
No, I finally bought an old car and run a few times, got the feel of it, but it turned out it was just a hobby. It turned into being full-time business then.
When did it become full-time?
1978. That's when I quit building houses, and really in the winter of '77, and started racing, and then immediately I only had to run this a little bit till I got, you know, into a full deal with Jack Beebe and Race Hill Farm Car.
I mean, let's say you were, what, 38?
38, yeah.
38 years old?
I think I was 39 when I run for the rookie with Earnhardt, and Taylor Bonnet already run for the rookie. I can't remember the ones in the group now, about 6 of us, but Earnhardt won the rookie that year.
And you was 39-year-old rookie?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a pretty big gamble to take, wasn't it, to stop your house building, your construction business to go racing?
Well, yeah, it was, but I had my brother was partners with me in the building business, and we'd had our group builders, the guys that helped us for a long, long time, and some of them used to work for my dad, so I just more or less took like a year leave of absence.
I see. You really didn't quit.
No, I could come back at any time. I made that perfectly clear when I left. Now, you know, if this don't work out, I'm going to come back, you know, to building, and then it didn't seem like it was going to. You know, it wasn't a very good income there at all, and then as it went on into 1980, it got a lot better then.
And you started making a living?
Yeah.
First couple of years it was tough, huh?
Oh yeah, very little. You made very little money. You got 25 or 30% of the purse, and we didn't run all the races. The purse was pretty small, and I mean, our finishing position was not that great, you know. So the income, I think we grossed maybe $60,000 for the whole year. The car did. So we didn't run all the races, you know.
So you took in about $15,000,
yeah,
and had to pay your own expenses,
yeah,
probably.
Spent 18.
Well, I think a lot of people have seen that movie.
Yeah, but then it got better, you know, and the next year was great for us with the Race Hill Farm Jack Beebe team, and then starting in '81 was great, and I had a chance to get into a second scope car.
How many seconds did you have before you finally won one?
Oh, a lot of them.
What'd they call you?
bridesmaid, but I was
Bridesmaid,
tickled
hard
to death
luck
to
here.
get that second.
Why?
Oh man, the second place run, you know, my first year in there, in the second year really with Jack Beebe in '79, we run second to Darrell, almost won Dover, you know, we run second to maybe to you, I can't remember, we run a lot of seconds, you know, and I was just tickled to death to be finished second, nobody else wasn't finished second.
Better than third, right?
Right, yeah, and we finished a lot of second, I think 7 or 8 each year there. And then with Travis Carter and the Scope Bandit team, you know, we set on the pole just right off the bat there at Darlington, and we won that off. It didn't take us long to win.
1991 had to be your biggest year as far as notoriety, money, everything else, wasn't it?
Yeah, race wins. You know, we won 5 that year, and also won 5 Bush. That was 10. It's pretty hard to win 10 races of any division, you know, during the year. But it was the best year. Yeah, definitely. Win 4 in a row, Winston Cup, and won some good races, and it was it felt good, and I hope we can still do that this year.
What is your favorite racetrack or type of racetrack?
Well, I like you know, the mile. I like mile and a half. You know, anything like Michigan, Dover, Darlington, Pocono. I like all those racetracks. Charlotte.
The harder the better. I mean, Dover's they call it the Monster Mile, and Rockingham is called the Rock because you're out there 4.5 hours. That doesn't bother you?
No, it seemed like those were handling tracks, and it just seems like that we just do better on a track like that than it does more of a power track. So I always look forward to, you know, Darlington, Dover, and Rockingham, Pocono, those races.
Does your age help as far as patience, not being too aggressive to begin with, and being there at the end of the race?
Well, I hope so. That's the way I try to be, but in the situation we're in right now, looking at maybe, you know, we're still trying to win that championship, and even though we don't try to make that our main thing, still we got to stay on the racetrack, and we got to finish races. So you got to do what it takes to do those things. Last year we didn't in the late part of the year. You know, we geared the car lower. We took, and we just went out to win races. I think you got to look at it in 2 different ways of racing. And if you do want to be, say, win it or be in the top 3 or 4, it takes us some figuring out as you go along. So that's what I try to do now.
You look like you're about 30. How do you do
it? Inherited it.
I mean, seriously, is there some buttermilk you rub on your body or something like? I mean, is there something that you do to look like this?
Just sweat a lot.
I mean, for 52 years old, you're in marvelous shape.
Well, I hope I can stay that way, but you never can tell, you know. What's all be wrong with you, you don't even know it. I feel good today, and I feel good all the time. Hope I still feel good at 55, 56.
Next is something a little different. There's a special feeling in the garage area on race morning, and we tried to capture a little of that feeling for you. Before dawn, race morning, the garage area. It could be anywhere on the Winston Cup circuit. The crews are already there, making their final adjustments in search for the perfect setup. It's a special time in the garage area. Everybody's still a winner. Everybody truly believes that this will be their day to visit Victory Lane. War wagons are rolled to the pits, and the last cars are unloaded in front of the still empty stands. Suddenly, a flood of people engulf the garage, and a new feeling takes over. Drivers make their rounds. Smile for the camera, and for the fans lucky enough to be inside. There's a chance for an autograph from their hero. Car owner Felix Zapatas surveys the scene. The pace picks up as the preparations continue and memories are captured. As the morning rolls on, cars move to their final inspection.
Dale Jarrett's Interstate Battery Chevrolet is pushed through the crowd to join the other cars waiting up on the grid for the drop of the green flag. The King is here. And the King is here. It's all part of the craziness that engulfs the garage on race morning. Slowly, steadily, the stands begin to fill. And anticipation of the coming competition continues to grow. The cars, the focus of all the preparation, now sit on the track, waiting to roar to life. The crowds and the focused energy in the garage area begin to fade. Bill France serenely surveys his domain as the race draws near. The last crewmen make their way to the pits. Kyle and his wife Patty share a personal moment as they head up to the grid. Davey and his wife Liz find their way to the starting line. Colonel Roger Penske checks his watch at final time. Bill Elliott hustles to get up to his car. And on this race morning, Alan Kowicki has to hurry to the start of a race that will end with him as Winston Cup champion. Hope you enjoyed that, as well as this entire volume of NASCAR Video Magazine. As always, it's been my pleasure to be able to bring it to you. And remember, this is your video magazine. Please, and I'm asking you personally, write me at this address with what you liked and what you didn't. Hey, this is your magazine, and I'm absolutely counting on hearing from you. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next edition.